Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into an argument about cannabis prohibition that, well, has almost nothing to do with the plant itself. It's all about the fundamental limits of government power, and it suggests we might have been fixing the wrong problem all along.
So, cannabis is getting legalized all over the place, right? It feels like the debate is finally over. Problem solved. But what if? What if that's like putting a bandage on a broken bone? According to one really powerful critique, the practical solution of legalization completely sidestepped the real issue, leaving a much bigger, more dangerous problem just sitting there unresolved.
At its absolute heart, this argument says that cannabis prohibition was never truly about public health. Nope. Instead, it was about the government crossing a fundamental boundary, a line in the sand that it was never ever supposed to police.
To really understand this idea, we have to go back, way back. We're talking about digging into the source code of American government, where the core principles for this whole argument are laid out.
You've heard the phrase, right? Unalienable rights. The Declaration of Independence drops this absolutely radical idea on us. These aren't permissions that a government gives you. They are fundamental liberties that you have just by being human. They exist before any government, before any law is ever written down. And the Declaration is crystal clear about the government's job description. Its whole purpose is to secure these rights. Notice that word, secure. Not create them, not grant them, but to act as a security guard for the rights you already have. That's a game-changing distinction.
So this sets up two completely different visions of government. Is it supposed to be a guardrail, there to keep you safe while you travel freely? Or is it an owner who gets to decide which roads you're even allowed on? This argument says that with prohibition, the government switched roles. It stopped being a guardrail and started acting like it owned the whole highway.
Okay, so that's the theory. But where's the proof of this overreach? Well, proponents of this view build their case on two of the most basic human domains you can imagine: what we eat and what we believe.
They point to ancient texts like Genesis, which describe this sort of universal grant to humanity to use seed-bearing plants for sustenance. And what's really crucial here is that it's not some special exception for a ceremony. It's a foundational statement about what's available for food, period.
And you know, this isn't just about interpreting some ancient texts. This whole idea that cannabis was woven into the fabric of ancient life, including religious life, is now being backed up by cold, hard, physical evidence.
It's pretty amazing, actually. Archaeologists at a Judahite shrine in Tel Arad found cannabis residue right there on an altar, alongside frankincense. And the analysis showed it was intentionally prepared for psychoactive use during worship services. So, yeah, this was not some strange foreign substance to ancient Israelite religion.
Now, this kind of government overreach isn't just an ancient problem. If you look for a more recent parallel, you find a perfect one: alcohol prohibition. It followed the exact same playbook, step by step. A moral panic leads to a sweeping ban, which creates massive criminal enterprises and is finally repealed because it was a catastrophic failure. Sound familiar? Okay, so now we get to what this critique calls the smoking gun, the state's own contradictory logic. This is where its power was applied so inconsistently that it kind of revealed the whole game.
While the government was maintaining this total iron-fisted ban on cannabis, it made a very specific exception. It allowed the use of peyote, another psychoactive plant, but only for use in indigenous religious ceremonies.
And this created a glaring double standard. One religion's practice was accommodated because the state saw it as narrow, ritualized, and, quote, manageable. But another practice, one that was maybe more based on individual conscience, was just denied because it was, quote, illegible to the government. So at that point, were they really rights anymore? Or were they just permissions, handed out to groups that the government found convenient?
So, after you look at the first principles, the history, and the state's own inconsistent actions, what's the final verdict on this whole exercise of government power?
You have to make this crucial distinction. Regulation is one thing, managing demonstrable harm, like laws against impaired driving. That's a legitimate government function. But prohibition wasn't that. It was an assertion of ownership. It was a claim that the government could decide whether a plant from the earth could even exist in the hands of its people.
And that brings us right back to the central problem. Legalization is a practical fix, for sure. It stops the arrests, it ends the black market. But it never forced a real reckoning with the root cause, the government's claim that it had the authority to cross that line in the first place.
I mean, when you strip away all the legal jargon and the philosophy, the story is just incredibly simple. People were told plants were for them. The government pointed to one and said, nope, not that one. It made an exception for some religions, but told others their faith didn't count.
The whole policy failed miserably, caused immense harm, and had to be undone. That's not a story about regulation, it's a story about overreach.
And really, it all comes down to this one simple principle. The default position in a free society is liberty. It's not up to you to justify your freedom, it is always up to the state to justify with a very, very high burden of proof any restriction on that freedom.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty unsettling question. While this specific chapter over one plant may be closing, that underlying conflict over the proper limits of government power, that was never resolved. The precedent of overreach is still on the books, and it just leaves you wondering, which boundary will be tested next?